the bottom line cost differential and also some level of detail on an alternatives analysis, at least that, lays out how you're arriving at the projected cost for going underground versus what's proposed, or if there's some other option. Because I think the two homeowners raise legitimate points, and I wouldn't be prepared to support it until we at least have that information, so we can see what the cost differential is and how National Grid or the contractor is getting to those numbers.
I agree with Ben.
Recording in progress.
So is there, somebody has to be. So.
We got another hand up.
Greg, do you have something else to add? Maybe it's just up there for.
I think, did you take over the sound?
Yeah, they should be able to hear you through the mics.
I don't know if we can hear them anymore.
I think he did he put his hand down? Okay, I just didn't know if the echo was off. So.
Ben has mentioned a path forward. And
You did?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, you requested it, yes.
Right, yeah, I think,
Yep,
I agree with it.
yep, I said the same thing, and I was just seeing if anybody had any comment on that, so I think we don't want to really approve this right now. We'd like to send it back and get that other information and connect with the homeowner, builder, whoever they were connecting with. Is that okay? Mike, are you still there?
Excuse me, I think the audio is cut out on the Zoom.
Yeah, because I feel like we're in a hole here all of a sudden because we've lost your attention. We lost Mike too.
I would use your mic for now.
Okay, use this mic?
Use your computer mic if you can.
I don't have my computer on.
Recording in progress.
You are muted.
Hold on, we're gonna turn the owl back on.
Okay. Okay. Can everybody hear us?
Yes, but we're getting the echo again.
Hold on one second. You think so?
hear you all too well.
I would say, yeah, go for it.
attorney in the last lease negotiation between HWYSA. There's the
thought it was an entirely CPC thing. Okay.
Can you turn your volume down so that we can connect our...
Can we just wait to do that at 7?
Sorry, yeah.
Can we just wait to switch it over till 7? Testing, 1, 2, 3, is there any background?
It's a big structure.
No,
Like this one.
it's all good? Okay.
Covers a lot of territory.
Yeah, it's,
I can't hear me. Oh, I can hear me now. Yeah, yeah. Calling back to order the
Recording in
Select Board meeting
progress.
on April 2nd, 2024. In attendance is Gary Cheeseman, Deirdre Farade, Ben Timon, Peter Clay, myself, Diane Bucco, our administrative team, and we are now joined by our moderator, Roger Smarridge, and I'll throw it over to the FinCom to open their meeting.
This is Jeff Calder, Wenham Finance Committee. I call to order meeting of the Wenham Finance and Advisory Committee at 7:02 p.m. Tuesday, April 2nd, joint with the Select Board for the warrant hearing.
And those in attendance are,
And those in attendance are myself, Jeff Calder, Scott Schoenberger, Finn Sprague, and I thought we
who are
would
the
have
attendees?
David
Joe, who's on the
Harnish.
attendees?
by video.
Yeah.
Right here, yeah,
Do you want to
Bring him
bring,
into
can
the
we
panel.
bring David into the,
yes.
no, David, yeah.
Just David.
Yes.
David, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
can.
we can. Yes, and David
Great.
Harnish.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming, everybody.
We have a quorum.
If I may just take a couple minutes, we didn't do our announcements, our town administrator announcements and updates, so I'm just going to throw that back to Steve so he can do quick updates.
I'm actually gonna throw it to Mary Beth real quick. You probably could do the diaper drive better than I could, since I just
Oh.
got the email.
Mary Beth, can you come, maybe you want to come to the table and you can share the mic right there?
Which one do you want me to use?
Would it, probably, just use,
Podium, maybe?
oh, I'm pointing here, they're pointing there.
Good evening, esteemed members of both the Select Board and the FinCom. I'm Mary Beth Ting, the Public Health Nurse for the town of Wenham. And the public health nurses of the North Shore traditionally have done a diaper drive during the month of April. So we will continue to do a diaper drive this year. As you exit the building tonight, you'll see the small collection box. These are going to families in need. It has been determined that diapers, are expensive and they're a stress for many families. And so when we can help out, we will do so. What we collect will be going to the Accord Food Pantry to support families in our area in Wenham and surrounding towns. So the box is there. There will be a box at the Council of Aging, at Delight's Ice Cream, and then I will be sure that we have a collection box available at town meeting that I will take care of. It will be at the check-in with Kate Mallory and somebody else. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
Any questions? Thank you.
Steve, did you have any other updates right now?
It was
Okay,
just the town meeting and you covered that, so.
perfect, we are good to go. So, I
Yes.
think it's all you.
Yes, so I just thought I'd cover off quickly the format for this evening's meeting. Welcome, of course, folks in the audience, both here at Town Hall and also on Zoom. So the Select Board will introduce Article 1. FinCom will introduce and read Articles 2 through 13, and then kick it back to Select Board to cover Articles 14 through 22. After reading the articles, there'll be a brief explanation of what the articles are intending to accomplish, invite additional comment here in the room, and then open it up for the public, and would ask that anyone from the public that wishes to comment or ask questions to please state their full name and address before doing so. We'll also ask the Roger Smurge, town moderator, who is here with us, to, when we get to Article 7 through 11, just explain a little bit about how the consent calendar works. And after I do a brief reading of Article 13, would ask that Rick Woodland, the chair of the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, to describe briefly just what their expenses are and projects that they're proposing for FY25. So, Article number 1.
Deirdre.
Yeah.
We have our roles.
Sorry. Caught me off guard. Okay, Article 1, the status of the master plan from the Planning Board report. To see if the town will vote to hear the report not to exceed 10 minutes of the Planning Board on the status of the master plan or to take any other action relative thereto. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions on that one? I don't think so.
Okay, Article number 2, David?
Great. Good evening. David Harnish from Finance Committee. Article 2 is to increase the veteran and senior tax work-off abatement from $1,500 to $2,000. We have had some change in this language that has been reviewed and approved by outside counsel. We will be seeking a vote to increase to the maximum tax deductions available to seniors and veterans under the Senior and Veteran Tax Work-Off programs in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5K, and also Sections 5N. The language change is really to reflect the fact that those maximum amounts are $1,500 for veterans and $2,000 for seniors. And I think the language might read that both were moving to 2,000, and under the current maximums, which we're voting to move to, those amounts will be 1,500 for veterans and 2,000 for seniors. And if anyone has any questions.
Jeff, can I just make a procedural point on this one?
Please.
Please.
And just to clarify, the language of the article will not change, but the language of the motion that will be offered on the floor of town meeting will be along the lines of what David just described, as I understand it.
Yeah, of course. So, the article, and the warrant book's been printed, the article is written
and
as it is.
I've conferred with outside counsel, and I believe that the revised language of the motion is within scope, so we're good there.
Okay, excellent. And I'll
Great,
just
thank
add
you.
that this follows the pattern that the town has in the past of increasing to the maximum allowed by the state for seniors and veterans who wish to get some relief on their taxes by performing work for the town.
Excuse me, Joe, you're checking to make sure there's no hands up in the
Yes.
audience, right? Okay.
Yeah, I
Thank
was
you.
just going to ask if there are
Oh.
questions, audience present or virtually? No. Next up, Article 3, Annual Operating Budget Appropriation, Town and Schools. It reads to see if the town will determine what sum of money may be necessary to defray the town's expenses for fiscal year 2025, FY25, the 12-month period beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025, including expenses for the town and regional school districts, make appropriations for the same and determine the source thereof, or take any other action relative thereto. So I thought, because it is the budget article, that I'd provide a kind of a brief introduction and commentary a bit more than what you see in the warrant book. Fiscal year '25 budget total is approximately $24.4 million. That's an increase of $1.3 million over last year. The tax rate, which is currently $15.66 per thousand, is expected to rise to $16.49, or roughly a $714 increase in taxes on a median assessment of $860,000. This, of course, assumes that there's no change in the assessed values in fiscal year '25, but it does provide an indication for folks of how much they might expect their taxes to go up. Education represents 52.66%, or roughly 53% of the town budget, and the town spending the other 47%. Education budget is up 7.35%. The town budget is up 3.41%. The Hamilton Wenham Regional School District assessment to Wenham is increasing 6.63%. About 60% of that increase being attributed to the debt service of the field project, which the first payment of is will be due in fiscal year 25. Essex Tech's assessment to the town is up just over 50% due to a 5-student increase in enrollment from Wenham, going from 11 students this past year to 16 in the current year. Town departments were, again this year, instructed by Select Board and Town Administrator to submit level-funded budgets with increases reflecting only contractually obligated spending increases, plus a short list of exceptions that were considered critical to town services. Collectively, wages and benefits represent over 68% of town spending, and with cost of living increases, labor contracts, collective bargaining agreements with both wage and step increases, pushing wages up by about 5.78%, and health insurance premiums being up 9%, contributing to that 3.41% overall increase. Unlike at annual town meeting, I am not going to read every budget line item this evening for the sake of time, but I do want to highlight just a few areas or exceptions to that level funding mandate that maybe if you're reading the article, it will draw your attention when you're comparing last year's proposed spending to this year's proposed spending. First off, the Select Board wages, of course, are up on the increase from 3 persons to 5. Town Hall's expenses, you'll note, jumped up in fiscal year '24 and are increasing somewhat again in fiscal year '25. Last year included a $100,000 utility reserve, given the fluctuation of utility prices last year, and that's continued into this year. That's still in the budget. And a salary reserve for funds to be available for ongoing contract negotiations. That's actually increasing from $20,000 to $32,000 in fiscal year '25. IT spending is up on the conversion to Office 365 product suite, and along with that, the annual maintenance contracts for both that software and what you'll see later in Article 4 as proposed capital spending for a new town website and also budget software. Another item that you might notice is up above that 3-ish, 4% is the town clerk budget being higher due to expenses related to it being a presidential election year and the costs associated with that, as well as $15,000 that's built into the budget for the possibility of a transition from the current elected town clerk position to an appointed position. And then finally, the land use department is increasing. That reflects the conservation open space coordinator position changing from, or being upgraded from a part-time position to a full-time position.
Is the door locked?
And then lastly, just a few words about free cash. The State Department of Revenue certified the free cash amount after the warrant was sent to print. The actual figure is $2,526,303, an increase of $226,303 over the estimate that was used in the warrant. FinCom has chosen not to change the proposed uses of free cash that are noted in the warrant book. So in Articles 4, 5, and 6, where you see the term and the amount estimated free cash of $2.3 million, think $2,526,303. And where you see remaining free cash of $269,888, think $496,191. As noted in the warrant, the original plan, when the free cash amount was $2.3 million, was going to start or leave us approximately 1% free cash balance going into fiscal year 26. With that additional funds, we'll start the year next year, fiscal year 26, with about a 2% free cash balance. With that, I will pause and ask if there are questions of the boards first.
Jeff, right behind you. Oh,
Oh, yes,
yes.
please, Kirsten Alexander.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten Alexander, your town clerk. I just wanted some clarification around the salary on the town clerk, because currently the salary is budgeted on a 36.5 hour basis, and it's listed as 40 hours, which would be a pretty dramatic decrease in salary at that rate, for hourly rate. And also, just to clarify for the voters what the transition would be if we move to an appointed clerk. Yeah. There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, I take that.
Yes.
So, yeah, that was on my list of things to bring up to the board to see if you wanted to clarify in piece. So what it is in the descriptive or in the ledger, we have some details on salary, and the budgeted amount is correct. What we did was we took all department heads and divided it by 40 hours a week, and that's how we arrived at the hourly rate. So it does not change the compensation of the town clerk. The town clerk is an exempt employee and is not an hourly employee anyways. However, if the board deem fit that a clarifying statement be made, we can run it by the town moderator.
Okay, so the start point was the salary, and you just did the division to come up with the
Exactly.
hourly rate.
Yep.
divided
And the
by
position will go to 40
too high a
hours, is anticipated to go to 40 hours once if it does move to appointed, to be in line with the rest of the department heads in town hall.
Maybe
Does
I'd
not
ask-
affect the compensation
Sure.
of the town clerk.
I think I'd ask the town moderator to opine on this, and this is not a material change. Does it seem like something that would be brought to attention on an annual town meeting floor?
I mean, if the budget number isn't changing, then the budget number isn't changing. Obviously, if someone asks a question about the line item on town meeting floor after putting a hold, I would ask
I can explain.
Jeff
Yeah,
or Steve
that
to
correction.
chime in and answer the question if possible, as with any other question.
That's right.
But, I think that's all there is to it, if there's just a question after a hold. So, that's all I have to add.
I mean, for that change, I would agree that,
And I can say
I'll
the
be-
budgeted line item is not changing.
sure. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from online? Nothing? Nothing online. Okay, then next up, Article 4. Scott?
Article 4, use of free cash and other available funds to fund fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program. To see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash or other available funds a sum or sums of money to fund the town's FY25 capital improvement program, including the acquisition, equipping, and all other incidental and related costs in the amounts and for the purposes printed below, or take any other action relative thereto. You want me to read through the...
Please.
The specific capital items are Council on Aging, Senior Center first floor, rug flooring replacement for $10,000. DPW, 1-ton dump replacing 2002 Chevy dump, $115,000. DPW, 2021 trackless equipment lease payment, $31,000. DPW road capital supplemental Chapter 90 funds for paving projects and to cover winter damage in spring, $50,000. DPW fuel station tracking software, $25,000. Fire department communication radios, $229,000. Fire department replacement turnout gear per NFPA 10-year life, $35,000. Fire department SCBA bottles, $22,290. Information technology budgeting software, $25,000. Information technology Newtown website migration and setup, $35,000. Joint recreation HVAC replacement, $87,000. Library painting of the exterior, $26,700. Police department 2023 Durango equipment unmarked, $60,200. Police department 2023 Durango equipment and markings, $69,250. Capital projects total, $820,440, less unused prior year capital appropriations of $25,900. Free cash total use, $794,540.
Thank you. And I would just add that the town is operating now with a 5-year capital plan, which allows us to look ahead and spread out the impact of these capital purchases. And as you see again this evening, make those purchases through the use of free cash. The total amount over the next few years will vary slightly between 800-ish and $1 million until we get out into the latter year when there may be the need to replace DPW building, but more to come on that. But at least for the next few years, we'll see likely proposed capital spending in this general range. So with that, I'll open it up here to the board and committees, see if there are any additional comments before going to the room or to folks on Zoom. Hearing nothing, I think we'll continue. Article 5 is Dano, who's not able to join us, so I'll read Article 5. Article 5 is funding of stabilization fund to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $935,572 from free cash to the stabilization fund, or take any action relative thereto. And just a few words about the stabilization fund. As you can see in the comments, it is considered to be advisable for towns to hold free cash in a stabilization fund balance in the range of 5 to 7% of the town budget. With this recommended contribution in use of free cash, that will bring us to the high end of that recommended range at 6.42%. This, in a year that we have the availability of free cash, allows us to, at a vote of just simple majority, put away funds for future use that will require a two-third vote at town meeting to actually draw the funds out of stabilization. We see there are a number of capital projects, school and other in the future, and this is considered to be just prudent for the town to put some money away for a future use. Any comment by the boards? Comment in the room? Online? Okay. Next up, Article 6. Finn? Yes.
So this is Article 6, funding of the OPEB trust fund, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $300,000 to the town of Wenham OPEB trust fund. I don't know if you have any comments specific to this.
Yeah, just so similar to comments about the stabilization fund, there is a targeted range that we're looking to reach. That was somewhere between 10 and 15% of our OPEB liability, which is currently estimated to be just over $6 million. With this $300,000 transfer, that will bring our contribution toward that liability up to 15.58%. And for folks that aren't familiar, OPEB stands for other, well, I guess it's written in here, but other post-employment benefits, but those are essentially for retired town employees and cover the town's contribution toward their health care, insurance, dental, and a small component toward life insurance. Any questions, comments? Okay, moving along. We reach the consent calendar. So, Roger, if you wouldn't mind just describing for folks that maybe haven't been through it before how the consent calendar works and why we're looking at these combined.
Certainly, Jeff. So for those who are not familiar, a consent calendar is a standard tool used to streamline town meetings by considering routine or annual articles that are not expected to garner much discussion or potential amendments, into a single vote made through a single motion to approve the consent calendar and all articles that are in it. The way this works is that when we come to the consent calendar, I will summarize. This year there's 5 articles in the consent calendar. I'll summarize those briefly. We'll have a slide that lists all 5 of the articles in the calendar. And as I am reading each of the articles in the calendar, I will allow the voters in attendance to call for a hold on any of the articles. If a sufficient number of voters rise in support of the hold, we would take that article out of the consent calendar. Then we would proceed to vote on the remaining articles in the consent calendar, all within a single motion, and then return to any articles that were taken out via that hold process. So that's it in a nutshell. I do want to note something on Article 7, but I'll wait until, because that's not one that we've included in the consent calendar in the past, but there's a reason why we're doing it this year. But I'm happy to get to that in a second, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Roger. We will follow the practice as in the past year, where we'll rotate through a reading of these several articles. I can start, and then Finn, Scott, we'll just kind of go back and forth. So Article 7.
You've got some names assigned to these, but I don't know if you...
That will be right as the for annual town meeting. This would be something that Scott would do. Right.
Okay.
But yeah, for the purposes here, we'll just we'll share. So Article 7, prior year bills, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute a sum of money to pay any unpaid bills incurred in prior years, or take any other action relative thereto. This year there are two, actually. Quadrant Health Strategies, $85. The Throne Depot, $294 for a total of $379.
Did Roger want to?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just briefly
Yes, of
before we
course.
move on to Article
Yes,
8, Jeff.
thank you.
The reason why the prior year bills is included in the consent calendar this year, whereas in some years it is not put in the consent calendar, is that this year, because the funding for that will be already appropriated funds, as will be reflected in the motion that is made, it is not subject to a 4/5 vote at town meeting. If you're paying prior year's bills, if you're raising new appropriation to do that, it's subject to a 4/5 vote, but we don't have to do that this year. We've conferred with town council and confirmed that that will be the case, that this $379 will be through already appropriated funds, and therefore it's just a simple majority, and that's why we're including it in the consent calendar this year.
Thank you for that clarification.
So Article 8, cemetery and other trust funds, to see if the town will vote to accept the cemetery and other trust funds received in fiscal year 2023 as printed in Part 1 of the town report and on file with the town clerk, or take any other action relative thereto.
Article 9.
Article 9, cemetery sale of lots transfer. To see if the town will vote to authorize the treasurer to transfer the sum of $6,000 from the sale of cemetery lots receipts reserved for appropriation account to the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund for the maintenance of the 3 cemeteries in the town of Wenham, or take any action relative thereto.
David, are you able to jump in on Article 10? Or if not, we can read here in the room. Okay. Article 10 is transfer from water operating budget to water capital reserve fund, to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $35,000 from the FY25 water operating budget into the water capital reserve account, or take any other action relative thereto.
11.
Apologies, Jeff. Sorry, I lost my audio for a minute.
No worries.
I'm back.
Article 11, roadwork, Chapter 90 funding. See if the town will vote from available funds. See if the town will vote from available funds a sum of money for work on town roads, subject to conditions detailed by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division pursuant to MGL Chapter 30, Section 39M, Chapter 149, Section 44J, and Chapter 149, Sections 26 to 27F. Said work to conform with the requirements of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division, or to take any actions relative thereto.
So we'll just pause there and ask for Articles 7 through 11, if there are any comments or questions. Okay, hearing none. Article 12. Finn?
So, Article 12, water software purchase. To see if the town will vote to transfer a sum of money not to exceed $15,000 from the water surplus undesignated fund balance for costs associated with updating the current water meter reading software, including any incidental or related expenses, or take any other actions relative thereto.
Any comment, question? Okay, Article 13. I will read the article and then I'll ask Rick to just describe briefly the proposed transfers, expenses, and projects. So Article 13 is CPA reservations and appropriations. To see if the town will vote to receive and act upon a report from the Community Preservation Committee on the fiscal year 2025 community preservation budget, and to appropriate or reserve for later appropriation monies for the administrative expenses of the Community Preservation Committee, the payment of debt service, the undertaking of community preservation projects, and all other necessary and proper expenses for the year, and to determine whether such sums shall be raised from the Community Preservation Fund, transferred from available funds, borrowed, or any combination thereof as follows. And as mentioned, I'm not going to read through these all, but ask Rick if he'd just summarize or describe briefly the projects and expenditures for this year.
Excuse me, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know there is a hand raised as well in the audience, but if you want to let Rick go first or whatever you'd like.
Maybe better for Rick to...
Take the, if the hand raise is not about this issue, it may be better to take it now.
Okay, that's fine then. But it might be answered by Rick's comments, but...
Yep. Good.
We can open it up.
Mr. Waddell, you can speak when you're ready. I did. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out a typo in these tables, a significant typo. You'll see on the table with the open space reserve, the FY 2025 reservation of $69,631. You'll see below in the table, just a couple inches below, it says reserved open space and recreation. And that's actually not true. It is only open space. Recreation does not have a designated reserve. Thank you.
Did you hear that?
Did you get?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I think it's
in
talking
that
about the
chart.
title of funding source on the second chart, title line.
Right here.
It says reserved open space and recreation.
It should just
That
be
it-
open space is what is.
It's a subset.
No, it's a sub, that is, it's open space / recreation.
Falls under.
But the reserve is only for open space. There is no reserve for recreation. That money in that reserved bucket can only be used for open space, not recreation.
So it sounds like the suggestion is that the word recreation should be struck?
We'll need to ask legal counsel that, because
Yep.
that's not my understanding.
Jeff has a,
Yeah, if you look at the Community Preservation Coalition materials, you'll see that they show that the pie chart for allocations each year, which puts 10% to the three buckets, up to 5% to administrative, and then you can put the remainder into a budgetary reserve. They specifically lay out that open space, and then says in parentheses, including recreation, it is considered a subset of the open space.
Good, so I can proceed? If that's great. Thank you for having me tonight, Select Board members, FinCom members. We've had a very exciting year in the CPC in my first year as chair, and we will acknowledge Ms. Davis's role in the creation of CPC and thanking her posthumously for her work. So first, the first section of this, the first chart here is we're actually putting the money into the bucket. So we have to approve that all these expenses can go to this way. And this is really just state mandated, how to divvy up the money, what we're doing here. And then down below, I could speak more clearly about the individual projects. Actually, I will go up one, back up to administrative expenses of the committee. I have been working with the town administration this year on trying to more appropriately carry our share as the CPC of the expenses of actually getting the job done. And Joe has been great, helpful to us, helping us understand all the bits and pieces that go into supporting the CPC in Wenham. And we have put together a proposal with the House of Administration for a part-time administrative person to work on our work job, and it'll be somewhere between 5 and 20 hours a week, depending on the time of year. So you may notice year over year, the fiscal year administrative expenses have, I think, doubled or tripled, but mostly that is due to the fact that we're going to have a person on staff, part-time, dedicated to doing this, as opposed to squeaking in on other people's jobs. So that's part of the state requirement too. So we're just kind of coming in line with that work. And the specific grants for the restoration and repair of the cemetery along Main Street, the DPW has come to us and said, oh, the mortar's missing. What can we do to help? And so they put in an application, and we're granting them the money to repair in time for the 250th anniversary of the United States, coming up in 2 years. The rehabilitation of the Karen Wolf Memorial Garden. If you notice, outside of the Bucher School, there's this overgrown patch of weeds that a bunch of town people and administrative people in the town hall have put together a plan to resurrect that garden and make it more accessible to all and more maintainable. So we're also working on a maintenance plan to make sure that we just don't spend this money, and then, of course, in 10 more years, it falls fallow again. And as I think we have 2 more years of the next item, the debt service for the town hall renovation project, which was the big, I think, inciting idea to get the CPA going, and we're coming to the end of the debt service on that building. Yay. The archive.
This year, Rick?
About 2 more years. I'm pretty sure it's 2 more years after this year. The archival resources, there's a great movement within the state to put as much hard paper format materials online to be accessible by all. And this is going to be the first part of their project doing this with the Wenham Museum. And then they will be hopefully coming back for another part of this next year. The next 2 items, the 1.5 million and these 237,500 appropriations requests for grants are to fund the Conservation Commission Fund, which is a state chartered, Commonwealth chartered fund, which allows towns to put money and then get it matched by state and federal resources to help purchase land for permanent conservation. So there are some properties that the Conservation Commission, through their master planning process, has determined that they are the most important to save for a myriad of reasons, including town input. And we're just backing them up by selecting, I think we picked 3 as a group that we thought were the highest priority in consultation with them. And this will hopefully allow them to be a little bit more flexible, allow them to negotiate if a property comes up on the market and make money on the money, which will be good for them. A direct transfer to the Wenham Affordable Housing Trust would be their 2025 allocation directly to them for their purposes. And some funding for window replacement at the Wenham Tea House. I was there for dinner on Saturday night. The food's excellent at the new restaurant. But I did look around and see that the windows are in pretty shoddy shape. So hopefully this will be approved by the town to help them make some window repairs. And then the last of the appropriations or the requests are for signage at the Reynolds Farm in Larch Row and the West Wenham Playground, which is going through the rehabilitation now, backed up by I think it was the Conservation Commission, correct? Yeah. Those are the projects this year that came through the budgeting process, and we're very happy to support them, and I'll take any questions or comments.
Rick, I have a question for you. I mean, we've got a lot more trails in Wenham that aren't marked.
I think that would be a question for Kate. And because funding is available, year to year. So if that's something she wants to keep up with, I would speak to her about how do we get a plan going on how to do them.
I thought she did ask and was shot down.
I don't think so, not this year.
Okay. I'll check back with her.
Please.
Her application only spoke to those two locations, West Wenham Playground and Reynolds Farm.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you. This is a great example of your tax dollars at work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, one point on the motion 3, I think we need to add in coordination with the Hamilton Wenham School Committee. That's on the restoration of the park over there. As the select board does not have an agreement currently with the school committee for access to that school committee property. So I would think we need to just add that little phrase in there where it says, not in agreement with the open space committee.
Yeah.
I think we probably need to add in
It's not.
Hamilton Wenham Regional High School.
Yeah, that's from the script. It's not actually the open space committee, though. The proposal was from the land use
Land use.
department.
Yeah.
So, but the point is, I think the MOA, if we're putting that in the motion, needs to include the MOA with the school, as it's their property.
It's town property, but it's leased to the school,
And
is
so-
my understanding.
So we do not have,
Well, the school committee voted,
The school committee did
they
vote.
voted to allow
all right,
we don't have
Yeah.
it in writing, but we have an official vote in the school
okay,
committee.
that's good.
We do
haven't
have-
received that.
We have a letter from Dana Alara. I
Oh,
believe.
okay, I didn't see the letter.
Then we're good then.
Yeah.
The other point I make on motions, I think 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9, to strike the wording after consultation with CPC. Reason being that under the bylaws and the 44B, the CPC, having made recommendations to the town meeting, doesn't take part in the management thereafter, so that the select board would not be coming back after town meeting for consultations on the individual projects.
I see that in motion 2, 3. Right, I don't see it in 1 and 4.
No, so
And I
2,
don't-
3,
I don't
5,
know-
7, 8, and
And I
9.
don't recall seeing something like that before.
Part of what we've been doing this year is trying to upgrade our process. And a lot of that is to keep the CPC in the loop until the very end. This has been reviewed by council. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. If it's a procedural problem internally, let's discuss that. But our thought was, once we approve this, we're feeling like it just goes, and then we don't see it finished. So we're trying to find a way to stay in it till the end, just so we're advisory. It's not our job to negotiate a grant agreement, but just to be in the process until the end, until the things are signed. That's all. That was the intent of this kind of language. That's all. Thank you.
I think with the administration, if you have a staff member, that is how you stay involved. I think the CPC, as I understand it, is an organization that accepts applications, reviews the applications, decides if they're going to give the money to certain things, directs it to town meeting takes the vote, and CPC's job is done. At that point, it goes to the select board and the treasurer, the finance director to figure out how the money goes out and et cetera, reports through the administration of the CPC, so you know where the money is the next year.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I understand that part. I also want to make sure that just that we're at a check and balance to make sure that what does get determined by the select board still meets the original intent of the CPC. So just having that keep in the loop thing is just a check and balance to make sure that we're all on the same page.
I'll make the point again that that is not within your authority of the bylaw as it stands. That once the project is approved, it becomes a matter of the executive branch of the government, having gone through the legislative branch at town meeting, that the executive branch would take care of that project. And as we see that several of these projects actually go out to nonprofits and so forth, so that we have the control of those through the finance office in town. But it does not include any going back to the CPC once you make the recommendation.
I don't have any problem. It's your town. It's your management of the town. I'm just, trying to get this through. So if we could just make sure that's okay with council, that striking that language, I would argue for it unless there's a reason why it shouldn't be there. And if it shouldn't be there, I think Lauren can tell us that it shouldn't be there and we can just take it right out. Thank you.
So I don't think it shouldn't, I just don't think it needs to be there, and I think it would slow the wheels of progress. It would just cause it's an implement to just.
Impediment?
Thank you.
Is that the word you're looking for?
Yes, thank you. To doing it, so and I think it moves the CPC into outside of their purview. So that's the only reason I would recommend taking it out.
You can do whatever you want. I don't vote on any of that. All I'm wanting, the intention was to keep the CPC in the loop until all the documents are signed. We don't have to we're just there, ask questions, you just let us know what's going on. That's all our intention was. Not that we don't want to do any work for it, we just want to be kept in the loop. And this language we thought was a way to do that.
Oh, I think you were first. I was just going to say, I think the word consultation raises some problems in the manner that's been described. However, what if it were to say, after notice to the CPC, that would seem to fulfill the intent of the wish of the CPC to be kept in the loop.
Absolutely.
But it would eliminate any gray area about a need to consult or get, because that word, can be interpreted different ways. So, I personally would be okay with after notice to the CPC, because I think in the normal course of the execution of these grants, that would likely occur anyway, unless I'm wrong, that would create an administrative headache.
Excuse me. From my first season on the job, there was if we didn't get the grants back. So we didn't even know when they were executed. So we're just trying to close better the gaps between the executive branch and the CPC. So I think your language is great. That was our intent, just to be kept in the loop.
And I didn't say advance notice. I just said, notice. So after it's completed, that there'd be notice. I think that would probably.
I think that would suffice. I believe we were not getting that officially. It was just being done. That's great.
I don't know how people feel about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's where I was going to, basically, that there's an administrative mechanism that we could use to satisfy the desire of the committee to
absolutely.
stay informed
Yep.
and in the loop, which I think is a fair request.
Agreed.
And it's good that the committee wants to stay engaged.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to add one point as the moderator. This is the CPC article. By tradition, we do allow the chair of the CPC to make the main motion. That'll still be the case. It sounds like the chair and the select board are in agreement on a modification to that motion. So I think we're all good. I love this. This is great dialogue, folks. Let's see more of this on Saturday.
So, Madam Chair, it looks like that would be an edit across several motions.
Yep.
I think you've got which ones those are.
Council in the morning to get those updated before we print the script.
And I would add that, with that, I will yield the agenda back to the Select Board, starting with Article 14.
Gary, you're up.
Article 14. To see if the town will vote to add a new Article 5, Section 537 to the Wenham bylaws as follows. Article 5 titled Organization and Succession of Board, Commission, Council, and Committee Officers. Section 537, Organization and Succession of Board, Commission, Council, and Committee Officers. Part 1, all elected multi-member bodies shall reorganize at the first meeting after the town hall election. All appointed multiple member bodies shall reorganize at the first meeting of the new fiscal year or within 30 days of creation. The incumbent chair, if any, shall call a meeting within 30 days of the applicable event. If no incumbent chair, then the vice chair, clerk, or longest-serving member in that order shall call the meeting. When a new multiple member body is created, the appointing authority shall identify a temporary chair to call an organizational meeting. Part 2, each multiple member body shall elect a chair, vice chair, and clerk. If the body is responsible for a town budget line, appropriation, trust fund, revolving fund, grant, or any other financial instrument, a financial officer shall also be elected. In all circumstances, a majority vote of the full membership number is required to elect a member to the position. Part 3, in the event a vacancy occurs in the office of chair, the vice chair, clerk, or longest-serving member in that order shall temporarily assume the duties of the chair and call a meeting within 30 days to reorganize the body. The filling of any other officer position shall occur at the next regular meeting of the body. Part 4, the duties of the officers shall be as stated in the applicable bylaw for the body in the charge document of the body and is set forth in the town's handbook for boards, commissions, councils, committees, as may be amended from time to time. The impetus for this article is we've seen in the past occurrences where, for whatever reason, a chair becomes vacant, and we really did not have procedure to get that position filled, at least in writing. It was very much dependent on personality based. So I think this article will solve that problem and also gives us a written procedure that committees can refer to easily.
Are there any questions in the House?
Actually, I have
Yes.
one, just a clarification, Gary, on number 2. Finance Committee has a budget of $250. Does the second sentence suggest then that we would
Yes.
assign a finance officer for that?
Yes. So
Okay.
the intent is for every committee to have a designated person that liaisons with the finance department as to their trust fund or line and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so regardless of the amount,
Yes,
Just
you know, we got
multi
don't
committee,
like lots of exceptions
multi-member
in the
committees
general rules. Yeah.
should have a financial officer. Great, thank you.
Ms. Alexander? Yes, please.
Just wanted some clarification for the Board of Registrars, which is more directed by state law and doesn't currently have a chair, vice chair, and clerk. So is the expectation that it be the same, or, and Diane, you may have more insight in other places if it's run differently, but.
Well, I would say general rule would be that you need somebody in charge of the chair for whatever committee there is, a backup vice chair, and the Board of Registrars, if they have a public meeting, they do need the clerk to validate and comply with the open meeting law minutes and so forth.
Right, so the Board of Registrars is 3 members, very specific
Right.
members, right, and the town clerk. But I think, I don't know if the intention was that they be equal members. Not
That's
really
a
sure.
good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. It
They're
seems
just a
that
little
the
bit
clerk
different
is always
than-
the chair of the Board of Registrars.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, you do have a chair already, and it'd just be a matter of having a vice chair, in case the chair was absent for sickness or whatever, and would have someone responsible for the minutes.
Great, thank you. Any virtual people?
No.
Pete, I think you're 15?
Yep, Article 15, to move from elected Board of Health to appointed Board of Health, simple majority. To see if the town will vote in accordance with General Law, Chapter 41, Section 1B, to have its elected Board of Health become an appointed Board of Health, provided, however, that this change will also require approval of the voters of the town at the 2025 annual town election, or take any other action relative thereto.
Any questions, comments?
So does Dr. Ting know that,
We have,
we talked about him coming up and,
right, Mrs. Ting popped up though.
of course.
Mary Beth Ting, 23 Burnham Road. Dr. Ting is aware because we read the warrant book. We both had some questions about this, particularly in the commentary. I don't know if anyone can speak to allow the town to implement initiatives more creatively and cost effectively. I'd like to know a little bit more about what the thinking is there. I do know, the first paragraph makes a lot of sense to me in terms of the performance standards. There was just stuff on the DPH call this afternoon about more that's coming that the state's doing. They're actually rolling something out right now and pushing it out to stakeholders, and it's in a process. So there's another warrant article as well. I'm just trying to understand the move from elective to appointed, or yes, elected to appointed town clerk as well. So if anyone has anything they could share, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
So they're a little bit different.
I know, well,
But
yeah.
if talking Board of Health to the appointed Board of Health, I believe, if I may, Steve can help me, was actually kind of came from Dr. Ting with all the new DPH things coming down. And then just thinking about potential in the future regionalization, and that's where the initiatives, creative, more things could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when if and when it gets approved, and if and when it goes on the ballot and gets approved, it would not stop the elected members at that time. They would just term out, and then appointed ones would fill in.
Okay.
Is that the answer?
To some degree, I still have a lot of curiosity about how we're going to attract people to serve, and with the new standards, the knowledge that you will need to undergo this amount of training, which is not insignificant. It's hours of training to fulfill these performance standards now. So I have a lot of thoughts about that. Whether that's appointed or elected, I don't know that it really makes a big difference in who is going to step up and say, I'm willing to serve the community in this way. But
I think, so I did share this with Dr. Ting prior to printing it in the warrant, and he agreed with it. And his thoughts were that this would help, essentially what you're saying, by helping recruiting people they don't have to go through the election process. And from a creative and cost-effective standpoint, I think the town looks at it as a way to, right, so as these mandates are being rolled out and more burden is placed on particularly small communities, some of the small communities will have the ability to regionalize efforts with either a larger Board of Health that oversees a number of communities, and then be able to pool resources so that one community isn't trying to staff a small 0.2 of a full-time employee, and that would be able to hire, again, probably more cost effectively in the market, be able to attract somebody who's looking for a full-time job that would service multiple communities. And the first step to that, again, and this is a multi-year process, is to go to an appointed board, right? So in either case, to participate in programs like that would have to be appointed. And it doesn't mean that there may be more steps along the way that's going to be coming back to town meeting, but where this is at best case, 3 years out before the board becomes entirely appointed. We're taking that step now to kind of open doors in the future and be prepared. Exactly what it looks like, we don't know. A lot of the smaller communities are kind of struggling with it, and how we're going to take that next step.
Okay, I appreciate that, because there definitely are a lot of, having gone through all the training and the performance standards, there's a lot that's expected regardless of the size of your community. So that is a real issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Any other questions? 16, Pete.
Article 16, to move from an elected Board of Assessors to appointed Board of Assessors, simple majority. To see if the town will vote in accordance with General Law, Chapter 41, Section 1B, to have its elected Board of Assessors become an appointed Board of Assessors, provided, however, that this change will also require approval of the voters of the town at the 2025 annual town election, or take any action relative thereto, or,
Any questions on this one? Anyone online? Out of those 100 people, no one wants to say anything? Article 17, Ben.
All right.
Oh, 17 is,
Oh, it's,
is mine, actually.
What?
17 is mine.
17, sorry, 17, Deirdre. Yeah.
It's okay.
jumping ahead to the junk one.
Article 17, Community Septic Loan Program. To see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money for purposes of financing the following water pollution abatement facility projects: repair, replacement, and/or upgrade of septic systems pursuant to agreements between the Board of Health and residential property owners for repayment of project and financing costs by such property owners, including without limitation the payment of all costs thereof as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C of the Mass General Laws, and to determine whether this amount shall be raised by borrowing, including a borrowing through the Community Septic Management Program offered through the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, or otherwise, or take any other action thereon or relative thereto. So essentially what this does is allows Wenham to access state funding. This is a state-funded program, the Community Septic Management Program, funded through the Clean Water Trust. The town acts as a gateway, essentially, and we have to formally adopt it through town meeting, but allows homeowners to access low-interest loans in the event of a septic system failure. So if your septic fails Title V inspection, it's very costly to replace and repair. This would allow you to go and borrow money through the town, through the state program, at low interest, and repay it back over time. There is actually no financial risk to the town because these are state loans, and it's basically a good thing for the citizens to have access to. When you need it, you really need it, essentially.
I have a quick question for our moderator. Why is that a 2/3 vote?
Upon the advice of town council, since this is technically a form of borrowing, it does require 2/3.
But we're not borrowing.
We are, technically.
Okay.
Again, that's upon the advice of town council.
Okay. Any, Scott?
I just had a question. The commentary says for people who otherwise cannot obtain the money, but the way it reads, it doesn't sound like there's any means testing on it. And so I was curious if this is something intended for people who could not afford to repair, because I assume there's only a certain amount of money here, or if anyone whose septic system fails could just apply for this and be granted it.
My understanding is anyone can apply for it. Steve, do you know?
Yeah, my understanding is anyone can apply to it. The one thing I wanted to bring up about this is that it may make sense for the finance committee to make a recommendation on town meeting floor to this. However, it is, it's pretty I would consider it, as we've learned more in like the past week about the ins and outs of this, it's certainly more finance-related article than I originally had anticipated. There is, like was alluded to before, the state is doing the borrowing, but we're kind of the intermediary, and we're borrowing money from the state in a way, and then we are leaning the debt service on the recipient's tax bill. So there are some mechanics there and moving pieces that the FinCom may want to weigh in on at town meeting, just to be complete, where you weigh in on all the other finance articles.
If we're following the process that we did last year, I assume we'll meet prior to the beginning of the annual town meeting, which will give us an opportunity to review material in support of this article, if it's available.
Yeah, and
then-
Jeff,
and
Jeff,
take a vote.
Jeff maybe could spend like 5 minutes, because he has a decent amount of experience in this, and just like kind of just, I don't know, just quickly go into a little bit into the weeds, so folks have an understanding. It's a good program. It's been around for decades. It's just that, I wasn't familiar with it, and, as you learn a little bit more, I'm like, probably should have had the FinCom sign off on this.
Yeah, so to Roger's point, the town is borrowing. We are participating through a borrowing with the Clean Water Trust, and we then enter into, through the Board of Health, agreements and betterment agreements with homeowners in town who will pay the town back through the form of a betterment, and that revenue is then used to pay the bonds when they're due. There's usually a timing difference here, so someone will come to us, the Board of Health will approve that someone has failed the Title V, then they need to address that issue. To Scott's point, there isn't means testing. It's available to all. And in Essex, we have plenty of folks who use it that would probably not have other ways to finance these problems. And then we have folks that, certainly could get a home equity loan or whatever, but are able to use this program, and it's a cheaper alternative for them. Usually there's a timing issue here. So the town will front money to the homeowner. So someone will come in and they'll have, let's just make it easy and say it's a completed plan, $50,000. You're going to pay, Acme company to come and fix your septic system. The town will, ideally, we pay directly to the vendor. This is what starts the process. We immediately then submit to the Clean Water Trust and say, Bill Smith has, we've just spent $50,000 on this project, and they send the money back to us, to the town. Then it might take a year or two for the Clean Water Trust to actually close on this bond. So typically what we see happen in Essex is we're collecting a betterment for, a year or 18 months before the first, bond payment is actually due. So by the time we go to a town meeting and say a couple of years, if this passes, and, we come up with a number that says there's $20,000 due on a bond payment, we would probably already have collected, $30,000 because we've been collecting for more time than the bond itself has been out there. So that's sort of a hidden benefit of the program, is that the Clean Water Trust is actually funding these repairs for a time frame before we're actually entered into repayment. But Essex has been doing this for over 20 years. Right now we have $1 million was the last one we put out about 4 or 5 years ago, and we've gone through about 400,000 of that. I think we're only asking for 500. Administratively, the Clean Water Trust doesn't always let you take your full amount as a sort of line of credit, if you will. They break it down into sort of tranches. So for Essex, instead of saying, here you go, here's $1 million credit line, we apply for a $200,000 credit line. As we get towards the end of that, we apply for another $200,000. That can get somewhat complicated depending on how big a tranche they give you, because septic systems are getting more and more expensive. I used to think of them being, $35,000, $45,000, $50,000. The most expensive one we had in Essex a couple years ago was $118,000. which ate up, like 60% of our allotment for one tranche. So that can be, something we have to work with the Board of Health, just to keep an eye on what's in the pipeline, and, because there is some lead time for us to apply for sort of the next round of funding out of our total $500,000. But yeah, I would wholeheartedly support it. There's very, little risk to the town. Financially, you are just sort of on the hook for fronting money until the Clean Water Trust gets it back to you, which is usually within 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, basically all you're waiting for is for the Clean Water Trust to have a board meeting so that they can approve a disbursement back to the town of Wenham. So I can say, in Essex, it's been a really successful program, that had no negative impact to the town, and obviously a positive impact to the homeowners and, in the environment in the town.
Two questions on that. I assume since it's on here, the town it sounds like an administrative burden. You guys are comfortable with that, with the staff that you have now to administrate this? And then the second question was, when you get it sounds like this is, really positive cash flow. You're getting cash before you have to, comes due in a bond. Does that get segregated somewhere? That's not going to show up in our free cash or something like that?
No, so what you do is you have what's sort of called the special revenue fund, which is different than your general fund. It's a fund that's earmarked specifically for a specific purpose, and so the funds that we would receive in the form of betterment payments from the residents would go into this fund, and they would stay there, and then each year, we would have to vote out of that fund to pay off, the principal and interest payments on the loans, but it's completely outside of free cash or any of that.
When you say vote, do you mean the select board or who's?
Well, so administratively, each year when the debt is due, the town still needs to vote to actually authorize the debt payment for that coming year. It's just that you're not, unlike the debt payments that we're paying through the general fund, where we're raising and appropriating money to make those payments. All you're authorizing the town to do, the town meeting is authorizing us to make the payment using those betterment funds in the special revenue fund.
So we'll have an article on this going forward.
Yeah.
Perpetually.
Yeah. In Essex, it's usually like one of our first couple of articles because it's a nice, easy one to get out of the way as everybody's kind of still settling in.
Yeah, and just for clarifying, the betterment is a lien on your tax bill, so it is just like a real estate tax. The town is made whole. We get the right. The town has the first right to that estate. If they were to default in their taxes or whatever would happen, that's how we collect it. It goes on your tax bill. It's liened, and it needs to be paid. So that's how the town is protected on the other half.
In the event of a sale, a real estate sale, so, Finn, you take out one of these loans and you're going to pay back over 20 years, and then in 2 or 3 years you sell, what we typically see happen is at closing, that whole betterment obligation is going to be paid out, so, the new owner's not stepping into your shoes. So in that instance, you might have been planning on paying back over 20 years. That's what the actual Clean Water Trust bond is. But the town of Wenham in that instance actually has, the whole $50,000 or whatever has been paid to us well in advance when you sell your house. So what we've seen is, you end up with a lot more money in there just based on timing issues and then sales and things like that. We'll have, we've never run into a situation where we thought, well, there's $26,000 due to the Clean Water Trust and we only have, $14,000. We'll monitor that, but I don't suspect it will be an issue for us.
Just a comment. It was my understanding that there was some concern about the appropriation language and if that would actually require us to budget for the dollar amount and set it aside. Has that been resolved?
Yeah, it's been resolved. There is no issue. That's standard language. We ran it by the Department of Revenue, or Jeff did, and they are aware, and we do not need to raise and appropriate these funds. Nope.
Potential.
Nope.
No, I spoke with the DOR on Friday about this. Hamilton actually has very similar language in a program, and the DOR understood our, kind of trepidation around this raise and appropriate language. But based on the conversation we had, he was confident that, that wouldn't be the case. The worry for those who might not be familiar was that if we got to next November, December, when we're setting the tax rate, when they set the tax rate, they look at all of our votes and say, okay, well, based on this, here's what we think you need to raise, here's what your revenue sources are. And the worry is then someone might say, well, wait a minute, Article 17, you need to raise and appropriate $500,000. You know, you're going to need an override for that. We can't set your tax rate. But they assured us that that wouldn't be the case, that, you know, they understood, you know, our situation, and that, you know, this was strictly, you know, us acting as a conduit to a borrowing program, because the reality is we won't, between now and November, actually incur $500,000 worth of costs. We're not going to, you know, by the time we implement the program on July 1st, we're not going to run up $500,000 worth of debt in a few months, so it wouldn't clearly be that much money anyway. But, you know, they just said, you know, make sure you stay in touch with us, you know, remind us in, you know, the fall about this, and, you know, remind us when you submit your tax rate recap. But they did not see it as a problem. I felt pretty confident that they, you know, they understood what the intent was. He specifically mentioned intent several times.
So glad that was resolved.
And Jeff, to further that point, the motion that's been drafted and approved by town council simply says as to move to appropriate, not to raise and appropriate, and then the borrowing language is set forth therein as well as the offset. So,
and it's not a specific dollar amount.
it is a specific dollar. It's the 500,000 that was previously mentioned.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
It's not a question on 17, and I apologize. I have a question on 16. Is it allowable to go back to a prior? Is that okay?
Yeah, let's go back.
Jim Purdy, Larch Row. The General Law, Chapter 41, Section 1B, elected to appointed assessors. The second paragraph in the commentary kind of jumped out at me. And my question is the establishment of regional boards of assessors, while we also have a local board of assessors. What's the relationship, the interaction between a regional board and the local board? Does that assist the community? Are we accountable to the regional board? How do we know how that's going to work? Joe, I know you're representative of the Board of, or work with the Board of Assessors. How would that particularly work?
I'll grab it. So the regional, well, a couple things. The Municipal Empowerment Act has not passed, right? It's just been introduced, but within it there is the option of a regional board of assessors, which would replace your local board of assessors. So it would be similar to the Board of Health, where, you know, a lot of communities are having trouble finding participants to serve on their board of assessors, difficulties finding assessors. So it is, again, nobody's gone this route yet. Not even to say that Wenham would go this route yet. It's just, you know, this is just an option, and it would be to, you know, replace the local board and insert a larger regional board that maybe oversaw the values across a number of communities with the representative from the town of Wenham.
So it's Arch.
Again, that's not the proposal. It's just that specifically, that's what that's referencing in the Municipal Empowerment Act.
So if we have our own Board of Assessors, a community can determine whether to tap into the regional board or not?
Yeah, participate, right. If there's like communities surrounding you, I mean, I would think geographic location would make more sense here, so you wouldn't want to regionalize with like the town of Sudbury.
Right.
But if, you know, we would build out the, you know, so we're already in a shared service agreement with Hamilton, right? But the state, the way it's set up now, still requires 2 individual local boards of assessors and 2 submissions annually. So it's like we have the shared assessor, but he's really doing the job twice. You know what I mean? Literally 2 times. There's no like combining of efforts to reduce redundancy. So the direction here is to, again, it hasn't been done in the state of Massachusetts, it's not even allowed yet. But the idea here is to be able to create, you know, a regional board with districts for valuation purposes, and to be able to centralize the reporting and valuation piece.
Evaluation
Of how the
Of
formulary works for the assessing
Yeah.
process in each community?
Yes, right, the model would be no different. The model would exist independently with other models that represent other communities, but it would be the submission of all the analyses together to arrive at certified values, because we have to get the values certified every year, instead of going through, one assessor shared between two communities, or in some instances, one assessor between three communities that does the dance, 3 times every year. It's to just do it once. You're basically maintaining one set of books.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Steve, I actually have a follow-up question on that.
Sure.
So, assuming that the motion under Article 16 passes and the effort to move this board to appoint it also passes the ballot at 2025 annual town election, and assuming that the Municipal Empowerment Act is passed on Beacon Hill, would that then still require a future town meeting article to opt into a regional board, or would that be something that the town would automatically be authorized to do under the state legislation that's proposed?
I can't imagine it not requiring another town meeting vote. Again, this is just to open up our options. It in no way commits you to this. I just was using it as an example of options that are opening, that we can entertain if we're appointed. If we're elected, it's not that we couldn't entertain while we're elected, but we're still, again, similar to this, you're still 3 years out from the vote at town meeting before it becomes a fully appointed board. So really just getting ahead of it.
Thank you.
Are there other questions on 16? Joe, it's all good?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll go back to 18. Now, Ben, you're up.
All right, thank you.
What?
Is there still an open question on 17?
Yeah, sure, just close.
It was a close, there was
Anything else on 17?
17, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's appropriate for us to take a vote, but given that it wasn't on the agenda for this evening, my understanding that we can't do that now, we'd have to post for it and probably do it on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that would be what you'd want to do. Yep. And we'll be posting those meetings as, just an FYI, we'll be posting those in the morning. We're waiting for this meeting to take place, and we'll post, like the select board, the FinCom, if it hasn't been posted already.
Okay, so you can add to the agenda?
We'll put that on the
in
FinCom.
that posting, that we'll have a vote on
Yep.
Article 17 recommendation. Thank you.
All right, Article 18 is a zoning bylaw amendment requiring 2/3 majority for passage. It reads, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws by inserting in Article 9 a new section, Section 255-9.9, called outdoor storage or stockpiling of junk, to provide as follows or take any action relative thereto. In the residential district, outdoor storage or stockpiling of scrap metal, scrap vehicles or vehicle parts, inoperable electronics or appliances, construction debris or similar materials or junk is prohibited, 1, in the front yard of any lot, 2, within the setback areas of any rear or side yard of any lot, and 3, outside of the setback areas of a rear or side yard of a lot, unless such stored or stockpiled materials is in a single location not exceeding 200 square feet of ground coverage. Adjacent lots held in common ownership or control shall only be entitled to the same 200 square foot single location allowance for rear and side yards outside of their setback areas. For purposes of this provision, outdoor storage or stockpiling shall not include, and the prohibitions herein do not apply to, 1, materials stored only seasonally or temporarily, that is, for fewer than 4 consecutive months at a time, and then put to use during other times of year. 2, construction debris or materials stockpiled in connection with a properly permitted or allowed construction project. 3, any materials stored or stockpiled for less than 10 consecutive days during a single calendar year. 4, yard waste, brush, compost, or other similar organic materials, Or 5, materials stored within a structure properly authorized by these bylaws and that fully conceals such materials from the view of abutting lots. So the genesis of this particular proposed zoning bylaw amendment is the select board's identification of a gray area in regulations around the storage of junk. The bylaws and the way they've been enforced historically currently create essentially 2 categories in this area. One is a junkyard, which is prohibited in any part of the town, and a junkyard is defined under the bylaws as the storage or stockpiling of 600 or more square feet of junk. And then the second category under the current bylaws and how they've been enforced is that a place is not a junkyard, and therefore any storage of junk that is less than 600 square feet has been deemed to be allowable by right in any district. And so you have this sort of unregulated area that this particular bylaw provision seeks to create some standards around. That's it.
It's amazing. Any questions in the House?
I have a question. What is the enforcement mechanism?
It would be the building inspector and zoning enforcement officer, and it would just be, as I understand it anyway, it would be handled similarly to any other alleged or complained of zoning violation. So I'm not sure that the zoning enforcement officer would, be kind of going out there on a roving commission to look for this, but if a request for zoning enforcement were brought to his or her attention, then they would have this guidance to work off of.
Thank you.
Are there any questions online? No? Okay.
Oh, and the nifty diagram. I know Gary originally came up with the sketch and Michelle perfected it, but this shows the setback areas that are described, 15 feet on the sides, 15-foot rear setback, and then the front yard is prohibited from having any junk under this bylaw. So it shows the gray area around the house is the 200 square foot area. Yeah.
Ben, just one procedural question. I believe I know the answer, but I want it on the record. The planning board has held its statutorily required hearing on this proposal?
They have.
Thank you.
Yep. And they voted in unanimous support of it.
Yep.
Okay, Article 19, Deirdre, you're up.
Okay, unless anyone prefers that I read the text in the entirety, I'm going to read the purpose and intent, the use and regulation, and the exemptions. Article 19, the ban of single-use plastic bags. To see if the town will vote to amend the Wenham general bylaws by inserting a new section, Section 220, thin film plastic bags, as follows, or take any other action relative thereto. The purpose and intent. Section A, the town of Wenham is committed to protecting the environment and the public health, safety, and welfare of its residents. Section B, the purposes of this bylaw are to protect and conserve Wenham's natural and economic resources, enhance the town's natural beauty, reduce land pollution, advance solid waste reduction, and encourage the use of reusable and recyclable bags within the town. Therefore, the town of Wenham will implement this bylaw to phase out the use of thin film plastic bags by all Wenham business establishments by December 31, 2024. Use and regulations. A, thin film single-use plastic bags shall not be distributed or sold at any establishment within the town of Wenham as of December 31, 2024. B, establishments may only offer reusable bags or recyclable paper bags to customers at the checkout or point of sale. C, establishments may charge and retain a fee for any recyclable paper bag or reusable bag they offer. D, nothing in this bylaw prohibits customers from using bags or other containers brought by the customer to the establishment. Customers are encouraged to bring their own reusable bags. There are a few exceptions to this, exemptions. The following are exempt and not subject to the provisions of this bylaw. A, bags a minimum size of 11 by 17 inches used by customers inside establishments to, number one, package bulk items like fruit, nuts, candy, or small items. 2, contain frozen foods, meat, or fish. Or 3, contain flowers, plants, or items where dampness may be a problem. B, dry cleaning bags or bags sold in packages containing multiple bags intended for home use, including but not limited to pay-as-you-throw bags. Okay. Enforcement. This bylaw may be enforced by any means available in law or in equity, including non-criminal disposition in accordance with Section 1.1 and 1.2 of the general bylaws.
That was a good selection of the bylaw. Does anyone have any questions, comments, in-house, over there? No? Okay. And that's just a simple majority because that's a general bylaw. Article 20, resolution, change the state flag and seal. To see if the town will vote to adopt the following resolution or take any action relative thereto. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Wenham hereby adopts this resolution in support of the work of the Special Commission on the Seal and Motto of the Commonwealth, established by a resolve of the General Court in 2021, and appointed by the Governor to recommend changes to the current flag and seal of Massachusetts. And in support of a new flag and seal for the Commonwealth, that may better reflect our aspirations for harmonious and respectful relations between all people who now call Massachusetts home. The town clerk shall forward a copy of this resolution to Senator Bruce Tarr, Representative Jerry Paracella, and Representative Sally P. Cairns, and to Senator Nick Collins and Representative Antonio Cabral, the co-chairs of the Joint Committee on State Administration, with the request that they support the work of the aforementioned Special Commission and advocate for a new flag and seal for the Commonwealth. So this is an article that was brought forth to us by the Human Rights Committee to give our support to this committee on a state level to redesign and renew and update our seal and flag. So are there any questions on that? If anyone's out there, they'll have to text us. Article 21, so close to the end. Amend the bylaw CPC term limits to see if the town will vote to amend Section 5-34-2 of the town bylaws Community Preservation Committee to impose 10-year term limits on committee members so that the section provides as follows, or take any action relative thereto. It states members of multiple member bodies shall be designated by such body for up to a 3-year term on the Community Preservation Committee. Such members shall not be designated for a term longer than the term being served on their designating committee. At-large members appointed by the Select Board shall be appointed for 3-year terms. Any member serving for 10 consecutive years shall be ineligible for reappointment until after the succeeding annual town meeting. Any vacancy on the Community Preservation Committee shall be filled for the unexpired term by the entity responsible for the original appointment. This is very similar to the article we had in 2023 at the special town meeting that had an amendment to the motion and may have gotten a little bit confused. What happens after we do an amendment at town meeting, the town clerk has to submit certain paperwork to the Attorney General to get approval to be able to make that bylaw valid. I think that the Attorney General misunderstood, or somehow the intent of the bylaw wasn't understood by the Attorney General. So to correct that, to make sure we have the proper intent that was made in 2023, that was the special in 2023, not the annual. Was it 2022? 2022, says the little bird. The special in 2022. Thank you. We just want to bring this article back to make sure that that composition of the CPC is correct. Any questions? Anybody online? No one's asking, no hands up? Yes, we got a hand up in the back. Rick, come on up. 2022, wow.
Yeah. We didn't have a special last year.
Rick Woodland, Chair of the CPC. My only question or concern with this is I've heard from several people that it was a little confusing. I don't know how to make it less confusing to people, but if there's anything anybody has before Saturday that could help, people just said they didn't quite read this right.
This is misunderstood.
Yeah, so I don't know how that could help, but I've heard from several people because they came to me,
Yeah.
and I just want to relay that to you
So-
folks.
This is how I understand it, and maybe it makes sense, and you could tell me. I would explain it by saying that the intent of this is that anybody serving on the CPC has a 10-year limit, and then they have to take a break. They can be reappointed the fall after that next town meeting, but everybody that's on the CPC gets 10 years consecutive and then needs to take a break. Is that correct?
I think that would be helpful.
I think it's hard, this is only a piece of the CPC bylaw, so we're missing the whole piece that says, you need a member from, I can't remember, open space, a member from HDC, so that's why they don't understand the other two different types of members. But the bottom line is, anybody who serves on the CPC after 10 years needs to take a break. I'll try to say that in town meeting.
So if someone has served three-year terms on the CPC, gets reappointed to start a fourth term, they would hit their 10th year in the middle of their fourth term, and that person could complete the term. It just says that they can't be reappointed after they've served 10 years. I don't know if that means they have to leave in the middle of their term, or they can't be reappointed once they've hit 10 years, which means they could fulfill their fourth term, 12 years.
For 12 years. Is that?
That's how it reads anyway. I don't know.
That is how it reads. Is that what we intended?
I don't think so. Up to a 3-year term.
Yeah, could be one.
Up to a 3-year term.
That is the language that was offered at in the amendment at the special,
Right.
and the language reads exactly as you stated it, Ben.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
So they served 3 years. They could be reappointed for 1 year. But I think it's saying you can serve for 10 consecutive years and then you're ineligible. It says for reappointment. It doesn't
But
say
it
to
says
serve.
right, it says for reappointment.
So they could actually stay.
I'm not charged with interpreting our
Right,
general
right,
bylaws,
right.
but
Yeah. But I guess the select board could keep track of these appointments, and if the select board under this has the discretion to reappoint someone for only a 1-year term, then maybe that's what would happen, is the select board would say, well,
That's
you've.
just for the at-large members. Those
the
other,
at-large.
the other committees
Oh, right.
that they also.
Right.
But every
Submit.
appointing body.
So there the confusion comes
Right.
back in. I
Yeah.
had it nice and clean.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I figured somebody might ask during the town meeting. It's probably rare that it'll come up. It'll be a full employment act for local lawyers once there's a controversy over it in 10 years. Can litigate it.
Huh. I think we needed a better answer than that for Saturday.
Yeah, I think that would
I
be
need a better
helpful.
answer.
But it should then be, the way this is structured or written, incumbent upon the appointing board to ensure that it doesn't extend past the 10-year, which is the intent, I believe. Because you don't have to appoint 3-year blocks, right?
But aren't we using, this is the exact words from the September amendment?
and
Yes, so.
and again, my preference would be that the main motion come to the floor with this exact language, and then whatever happens from there happens from there.
Amend it again and see if the legislature gets it, the AG gets it right.
Hopefully with no secondary amendments this time. Let's if we do, if people have multiple amendments on this one, I would ask that they make those motions sequentially. Let's take each amendment and vote it up and down, and then go one by one rather than doing amendments to amendments. Even though those are technically allowed under town meeting time, they're not great, and I've urged the Moderators Association to get rid of them in the next edition of town meeting time. We'll see if that happens, but that's what I'll say on that front.
If you were steering an amendment, would...
I am not steering an amendment. I want to make that perfectly clear.
Yeah.
Should 10 just be 9?
Or
Something divisible by 3?
ineligible to serve instead of ineligible for reappointment. You could change that as well.
But that has to come from the floor, because this
Right,
is
right.
what we want.
Yep.
Yeah,
This
I think
is
this,
what the intent was.
Yeah, this is the
right,
wording
the
that we
starting
start
point should
off
be
with.
what was the
Original.
intended language of the original amendment that was voted favorably at the special.
So Rick, I didn't take away the confusion like I thought I was going to.
Sorry.
I felt really good. You guys were like, yeah, that's it. That's it. Article 22 is the election of officers. The moderator usually reads that through. He'll read the ballot question.
Yep.
Do you want to do that now? Did we do that now?
Sure.
Go for it.
Okay, so the list of officers up for election this year are the town moderator, 1 position, 3-year term. The select board, 1 position, 3-year term. Hamilton Wenham Regional Library trustee, 2 at-large positions, 3-year term. Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee, 2 positions for a 3-year term and 1 position for a 2-year term. Board of Assessors, 1 position for a 3-year term. Board of Health, 1 position for a 3-year term. Planning Board, 1 position for a 5-year term. Water Commissioner, 1 position for a 3-year term. Housing Authority, 1 position for a 5-year term and 1 position for a 4-year term. And the ballot question that will be on this year's annual town ballot is, shall an act passed by the general court entitled an act changing the position of town clerk in the town of Wenham from an elected position to an appointed position be accepted? And that ballot question relates to a vote that was taken at the 2023 annual town meeting to make such a change contingent upon it coming to the subsequent annual town ballot.
And any questions on that? Why are you laughing?
And I'm embarrassed to come up and ask it.
No, don't be embarrassed.
We
We're
love the
happy
participation.
We're happy to talk.
Mary Beth Ting, 23 Burnham Road. I am becoming a little confused about the intent of what needs to be elected and what needs to be appointed with what we have on the ballot question and some of the warrant articles this year. So if you could talk about what needs to be an elected versus what needs to be an appointed. Is it the regional ones like school committee, select board's not regional, but I'm just a little muddled after some of this conversation about what is the intent and why would we elect versus appoint?
Big question. I'll try to start. This started last year. It's come up a couple times over the past few years, and a lot of communities have gone from elected to appointed town clerks for a variety of reasons. One, the bigger pool to choose from. No one's interested in running for election. Yeah, more experience. Someone's whispering.
Hope for more continuity.
More continuity. Okay, thank you. So last year it came up, and there's a couple ways to go from elected to appointed, and so there was a confusion, I think, last year as well. What we ended up voting on was town meeting voted to make the change, dependent upon a vote at the ballot. So it's not
For clerk.
for clerk. Sorry, what did I say?
You said
Okay.
for change.
Oh, okay.
I was just clarifying that the town meeting vote was just for the clerk
Just for the
position,
clerk last year,
And
right.
it was, the vote was to do so by way of a special act through the state legislature, rather than using the statutory mechanism, which is what is reflected in the 2 articles on this year's town meeting warrant regarding moving the Board of Health and Board of Assessors to appointed roles. Those articles propose doing that through the statutory mechanism.
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
That's okay. So does it have to be elected or appointed? No. Traditionally, all communities had an elected clerk, but as time has moved on, it's become a thing to have appointed clerks.
Yeah, I
There's
think,
pros and cons on both. Steve, go.
yeah, I think it's just important to note that we're not you know, the warrant isn't asking to change any of the officers that you see listed here outside of the Board of Assessors and, is there a,
Health.
Board of Health opening? And, you know, we're only proposing to change those for the reasons cited, you know, in the commentary and the additional discussions. Like, those are, you know, specific reasons for those boards. So we're not looking to change every elected official into an appointed. It's just where it makes sense in, you know, in the current environment is all.
And some positions are required by state law to be elected, the moderator, the select board, among them. So there could not be any effort to move certain positions to appointed. Just thought I'd add that.
Did that help? Not so much, you need more?
Well, I don't know that we can get to it right now, but it's just, you know, why would that apply, say, to the town clerk, but not the water commissioner or the planning board? I'm eager to hear more over time. I just can't quite grasp it right now, like why there would be advantages for appointed certain positions and not other positions, and that's just escaping me at the moment.
Gary?
I think that perhaps part of the answer is that, you know, 100 years ago, small towns were very small. You had very few mandates or responsibilities to the state level, whereas we see now that Board of Assessors or Board of Health, as you well know, is the workload imposed upon those bodies mandates someone that just isn't elected off the street, but actually has large technical background to fulfill those duties. And I think in town here, it's a slow process, but you know, we are fortunate enough to have people that have that technical expertise, such as the Water Commission, whereas others, we've seen that people are not running for election, and we have vacancies there. And so I think it was just select board judgment that here's one, like Board of Assessors, and as Dr. Ting said, you know, the future is coming on the health department, that we better move to a appointed position so that we're better positioned to regionalize or take on the extra workload.
And I think it's a valid question. It's a good question to raise tonight, and I think it's a good question if someone were to raise it on Saturday. This is a discussion that should be, it's a policy decision. It's a discussion that the town legislative body should be having as a whole. So I encourage you know, these questions on Saturday to facilitate the debate, because you know, Gary, Diane both made good points, and I think it's a good discussion to be having, so that when people vote on these articles on Saturday, they understand the reason why the select board has proposed them, and they understand what they're voting on and why they vote yes or no.
Perfect wrap up. That's awesome. I think we've come to the end. Does anyone have anything else before we?
Should we review voting hours for the 11th?
Voting hours for the 11th. Well, when we do voting for town meeting, it's 1 o'clock at Bucher School. Check-in will start at what time? Noon. So try to come in. What?
Be there at noon.
Be there at noon, 12:15. Be there before 1 because you have to check in.
Let's get that quorum.
Yeah, we need that quorum.
Tell your friends.
And Election Day, Thursday, the 11th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. here at Town Hall. You can, is early voting over?
Early voting, but
Absentee voting can happen anytime that the clerk's office is open, up until noon on Wednesday, the 10th. And with that, I'll let yes? I was going to let the FinCom adjourn. I was going to let the FinCom adjourn.
Looked like there were items on your agenda that were after the warrant, so.
Yeah, we did them before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I will accept a motion to adjourn the Finance and Advisory Committee's meeting at the warrant at 8:54 p.m.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Finn, aye.
Jeff Calder, aye.
Scott Schomburger, aye.
Dave Harnish, aye.
Thank you,
You're right, he
gentlemen.
came back. Yay.
And I move that the Select Board adjourn at 8:54.
Second.
All in favor?
Gary, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Ben, yes.
Pete, yes.
Diane says yes. Thank you, everybody, for coming, especially those people who came in person. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks for all the hard work.
Although